I never thought a scratch on a car could end a 5-year marriage. But that night, an billionaire wife didn't care about the truth. She only cared about one thing: her assistant's feelings. The first thing Victoria said when she saw me standing outside our mansion was not "Are you okay?" Not "What happened?" Not even "Why are you outside?" She looked at me with cold disappointment and said, "Did you really damage Jason's car?" I stared at her through the glass doors. The woman standing in front of me was the same woman I had married 5 years ago, the same woman who once held my hand in an empty office and promised me, "Ethan, when I build this company that you'll be the first person I thank." Back then, Victoria had nothing that no investors, no reputation, no billion-dollar company. Just a dream. And I was the person who believed in that dream. But now, she was the CEO of a company valued at over $10 billion. And I was standing outside my own home like a stranger that I looked at her expensive evening dress, that her diamond earrings, and the expression on her face. She wasn't worried about me. She was waiting for me to apologize. "Victoria," I said calmly, "you haven't even asked what happened." Her eyebrows tightened. "Do I need to?" That question hurt more than I expected, that I almost laughed. Almost. Because 5 years ago, if someone told me Victoria would one day look at me like this, that I would have called them crazy. "Jason called you, didn't he?" Her expression changed slightly. "Yes, of course," I nodded. "Then you already decided I was wrong, that's not what this is about." She crossed her arms. "Ethan, stop making everything emotional." I looked at her. Emotional? That was the word she used whenever she didn't want to admit she had already chosen someone else's side. "That I'm asking you what happened," she continued. "Jason's car has a scratch. A limited edition Aston Martin. Do you know how hard it is to replace that model?" I almost smiled. "Harder than replacing your husband?" The second those words left my mouth, her face became colder. "Don't do this. Do what? Turn a simple mistake into some kind of marriage problem. A simple mistake." That was how she described it. The thing that had her locking me outside at midnight. The thing that had her rushing back from a business dinner because Jason called her. The thing that made her forget I was still her husband. I took a deep breath. "Tell me what Jason told you." Victoria looked away for a moment. "He said you were careless." I laughed quietly. "Of course he did." "What does that mean?" "It means you didn't ask me because you already believed him." Her eyes sharpened. "Jason has worked beside me for 3 years. He understands my business better than anyone." I looked at her. There it was. The sentence I had heard countless times. Jason understands. Jason knows. Jason can help. Somehow, the man who arrived 3 years ago had become more important than the person who had been there from the beginning. I stepped closer to the door. "Victoria," I didn't crash his car. I didn't say crashed. "You're right." I nodded. "I accidentally scratched it." She immediately looked at me. "So you admit it?" "I admit the scratch happened." "Then what are we arguing about?" I stared at her. Because that was Victoria. She could negotiate a billion-dollar acquisition. She could convince investors to trust her with millions. But when it came to me, she never wanted the whole story. Only the part that supported what she already believed. His car was blocking the emergency exit. I said. Victoria frowned. "What?" "I was moving my car because your mother called. She said she needed the medicine I brought home." Jason parked his car in front of the entrance. "Jason wouldn't do that." I smiled. "You didn't even let me finish. He has a meeting tomorrow morning." He was probably rushing. Rushing? I looked at her. "Victoria," he parked a sports car worth almost $400,000 in front of our house entrance. I moved it because it was blocking the way. She shook her head. "You should have called someone." "Someone?" I repeated. "Who?" "Your assistant?" Her face darkened. "Don't mock him." "I'm not mocking him." I looked at the luxury house behind her. "I'm just surprised that after 5 years of marriage I need permission from your assistant before touching anything in my own home. That's unfair." "No," I shook my head. "What's unfair is that he called you once and you left dinner immediately." Her expression froze. I knew I was right. 3 hours earlier, we were supposed to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. Victoria had promised me she would leave work early. She even sent me a message. "Tonight is only about us. No business. No phones." I believed her. I bought her favorite wine. I prepared the dinner myself. I waited. Then her phone rang. "Jason." I still remembered the way her face changed. Not annoyed. Not impatient. Concerned. She looked at the screen and immediately stood up. "I need to take this." I watched her walk away. 10 minutes later she returned. She apologized. "Something happened at the company." I asked. "Is everything okay?" She said, "Jason had a problem. Not the company. Not the investors. Not the business. Jason." And now point 3. Hours later, I understood. The anniversary dinner didn't matter, I didn't matter. Jason did. Victoria looked at me, you're overreacting because of tonight. No, I shook my head, I'm reacting because tonight made me realize something. What? You don't trust me anymore. Her silence answered for her. Then she said, maybe because lately you haven't been acting like someone who understands my world. I stared at her. My world? Yes. She sighed. Ethan. My life is different now. There it was, the invisible wall, the wall she built after becoming successful. I have thousands of employees depending on me, millions of dollars in decisions every day, and I don't. That's not what I said. But that's what you mean. She looked annoyed that you're making this difficult. I almost wanted to ask her something. Something I had been thinking about for months. If I disappeared tomorrow, would Victoria notice? Or would Jason simply take my place? But before I could speak, another voice came from behind her. Victoria. Jason. I looked past her. He was standing inside the house. My house. Wearing a perfectly fitted suit, holding a glass of wine. Like he belonged there. Like I was the outsider. My eyes narrowed. When did he come inside? Victoria didn't answer immediately. Jason smiled. Ethan, don't misunderstand. Victoria invited me in because we needed to discuss tomorrow's presentation. Tomorrow's presentation. I repeated. On our anniversary. Victoria looked uncomfortable. Ethan. I looked at Jason, then back at my wife. While I was outside, you two were discussing business? Jason stepped forward. Ethan, this isn't about me. I almost laughed. Men like Jason always said that. Right before making everything about themselves, he continued. You need to understand Victoria carries a lot of pressure. She can't always focus on personal things. Personal things, our marriage, our anniversary. My place in her life. All reduced to personal things. Victoria rubbed her forehead. I'm tired. Then she said this sentence I would never forget. Maybe you should stay outside tonight and calm down. I looked at her. I thought I misheard. What? You heard me. She pointed toward the door. Until you understand how serious this was. I don't want to talk. I stared at her. You're locking me out? Her expression didn't change. It's one night. One night. That was easy for her to say. Because it wasn't her standing outside. It wasn't her being treated like someone who didn't belong. It wasn't her being replaced. Jason looked uncomfortable. Victoria. Maybe this is too much. For one second I thought he might actually defend me. Then he added, but I understand why you're upset. I looked at him. And suddenly everything became clear. He didn't want peace. He wanted this. He wanted me gone. Because as long as I was here, he would always be. Second, Victoria closed the door. The lock clicked at a small sound. But it felt louder than anything I had heard. I stood there. Outside my own home. My wife had chosen her assistant over me. And she had no idea that the man she just locked outside was the same person who controlled the future of the biggest deal of Jason's career. The $800 million deal he thought would make him untouchable. The deal he believed belonged to him. But he never knew one thing. The final decision was never Victoria's. It was mine. I stayed outside for almost 3 hours. Not because I couldn't leave. I could have walked away. I could have called a driver. I could have gone to one of my apartments downtown. The one Victoria didn't even know existed. Because she believed I only had the house we shared. But I didn't move. I wanted to see how long it would take for my wife to realize what she had done. I wanted to know if, after 5 years together, she would eventually open that door and say, Ethan. Come back inside. She didn't. At 1:17 a.m. I saw the lights in the living room turn off. At 1:35 a.m. Jason walked past the window. He was still there. I watched him leave through the front entrance. Victoria followed him. She didn't even look toward me. Not once. She stood there smiling as she said goodbye to him. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. That was the moment something inside me finally went quiet. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. For years, I thought Victoria was becoming distant because she was busy, because success changed her schedule, because running $1 billion company was difficult. I made excuses for her. I defended her. Whenever my friends asked why the CEO of a $10 billion company still treated her husband like an afterthought, I told them, she's under pressure. Whenever people said Jason was getting too close to her, I said, they work together. Whenever I noticed she no longer asked about my day, I said, she's tired. But standing outside that night, I finally understood, the problem wasn't that Victoria had no time for me. The problem was that she no longer valued me. And I had spent years trying to prove my worth to someone who had already decided I wasn't important. At 2:03 a.m. my phone vibrated. A message from Victoria. For a moment that I thought she finally cared that I opened it. Victoria, don't make this dramatic. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. That was all. No apology, no concern, no question asking where I would sleep, that I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. Ethan, don't worry. You won't need to talk about it. I deleted it. Then I locked my phone. Some answers didn't need to be sent. They needed to be proven. The next morning, Victoria acted like nothing happened. That was the part that surprised me the most. Not the anger, not the coldness, the normality. She walked into the kitchen at 7:30 a.m. wearing a business suit, carrying her coffee, and checking emails. Like she hadn't locked her husband outside the previous night. Like she hadn't chosen another man's feelings over mine. Morning. That was all she said. I looked at her. Morning? She glanced up. Yes, I almost laughed. You locked me outside until 2 in the morning. Her expression remained calm. And we're talking now. No, I shook my head. We're not. She frowned. Ethan, you're pretending nothing happened, because I don't want another argument. Another argument, interesting. Her my disappointment was an argument, my hurt was an inconvenience. That I poured myself coffee. Then I said, you know what bothers me the most? She didn't answer. It's not the door. Her fingers stopped moving. It's not Jason's car. I looked directly at her. It's that you never asked me what happened. Victoria sighed. Because you admitted you scratched it. But that's not what I'm talking about. Then what? I stared at her. The fact that you believed him before you believed me. For a second, something changed in her eyes, but it disappeared quickly. Jason has been helping me build this company. There it was again. Jason. Always Jason. I smiled slightly. Do you even hear yourself? What? You talk about him more than you talk about us. Her expression hardened. That you're being unfair to him. No, I shook my head. That I'm being honest about myself. She placed the coffee cup down. Ethan, Jason is important to the company, and I'm not? That's not what I said. You don't have to. The silence between us became heavier. Then Victoria said, you know what your problem is? I looked at her. You think because you supported me in the beginning that you own a part of my success. That I froze. Not because she insulted me, because she was wrong. She had no idea how wrong. I supported her, but not in the way she thought. 5 years ago, when Victoria created her first prototype, and nobody believed in her. Banks rejected her. Investors ignored her. People laughed at her idea. I was the one who introduced her to the first investment group. I was the one who brought her the first engineering team. I was the one who convinced a major technology supplier to work with her. But I never took credit, because I loved her. I wanted her to shine. I wanted the world to see Victoria, not me. The problem was she eventually believed the spotlight belonged only to her. You're right. I said. She looked surprised. What? You're right. I repeated. I don't own your success. She relaxed slightly. Good, but you forgot something. What? I looked at her. You don't own mine either. Her expression changed. What does that mean? Nothing. I picked up my jacket. I'm going out. Where? I looked back. For years, she never asked where I was going. Now she suddenly cared. Somewhere you don't need to worry about. Her eyes narrowed. Are you trying to punish me? I smiled. No, I opened the door. I'm just tired of asking someone to see me. I drove downtown. Not toward any place Victoria knew. I went to the top floor of a building that carried no public sign. The receptionist immediately stood up when she saw me. Mr. Carter. I nodded. Good morning. Your meeting room is ready. I walked inside. The room was filled with people. Executives, investors, lawyers, people who knew exactly who I was. Unlike Victoria. Good morning to everyone. They stood. Good morning. Chairman Carter. I sat down. A large screen displayed the information everyone had been waiting for. Project Orion acquisition. Estimated value. 800,000,000. The same project Jason had been bragging about for months. The same project Victoria believed would make him a legend. The same project that would decide the next stage of her company. One of my advisors opened the file. Mr. Carter, the final approval is waiting for your signature. I looked at the document. Jason's name appeared everywhere. Lead negotiator, strategic representative, future executive partner. I almost laughed. Future executive partner. He had already started planning his future. He thought Victoria's trust meant ownership. He thought standing beside her meant standing above everyone. He didn't know that the reason the deal existed at all was because my investment group had created the opportunity. One of my executives asked, are we still moving forward? I stayed silent. Because this decision was bigger than business. This was personal. Not because I wanted revenge, that I wasn't angry enough for revenge anymore, that I simply needed to stop protecting people who never protected me. Send a message to the other side. Everyone waited that I looked at the contract one more time. Then I said, put the deal on hold. The room became silent. Sir, the deal stops today, but Mr. Carter, this project is worth $800 million. I know. Then why? I leaned back. Because for 5 years I had watched Victoria believe she was standing alone, that I had watched her forget who helped her climb. Now she needed to understand something, that a building does not collapse because the roof disappears, the IT collapses when the foundation leaves. Because I said calmly, the person they are trusting is not the person they think he is. Meanwhile, across town, Victoria was preparing for the biggest announcement of her career. She had no idea. She thought everything was going perfectly. She thought Jason was about to secure the deal. She thought her husband was just upset and would eventually apologize. She thought she was still in control, but she didn't know that while she was celebrating Jason's success, the person who could erase it all had already made his decision. And for the first time in 5 years, I stopped standing behind Victoria, that I stepped away. And the world was about to see what happened when the person holding everything together finally let go. The next 48 hours changed everything. But Victoria didn't know it yet. She was too busy celebrating. That was the strange thing about people who had everything. They always believed they would have everything tomorrow. They believed success was permanent. They believed the people standing beside them would always be there. Victoria was no different. For years, she thought I would always be there, and no matter how she treated me, and no matter how many times she chose her company over our marriage, and no matter how many times Jason's name came before mine. She believed I was like a piece of furniture in her life, something stable, something that never moved, something she could ignore because it would never disappear. She was wrong. At 8:09 a.m., Victoria arrived at Carter Innovations. Not my company, at least. That was what the public believed. Everyone outside IT was just an investment group with mysterious owners. Nobody knew the chairman rarely appeared publicly. Nobody knew the man controlling billions of dollars avoided interviews. Nobody knew the person making the biggest decisions in the technology industry was the same man Victoria called an ordinary husband. The moment Victoria entered her office, Jason was already waiting. He stood up immediately. Victoria, she smiled. Good morning. The smile was different, warmer, softer. The same smile she used to give me when we first started dating. I watched that smile from the security footage later. Not because I cared anymore, because I needed to understand something. When did I become the person she could hurt without hesitation? Jason handed her a coffee. Your favorite. Victoria accepted it. Thank you. Small things. People underestimate small things. But sometimes small things reveal everything. Because I remembered when I used to bring her coffee. When we were building her company, I knew exactly how she liked it. No sugar. Extra hot. A little cinnamon. Back then, she would smile and say, you know me better than anyone. Now another man was doing the same thing, and she accepted it like it was normal. Jason sat down. The Orion meeting is ready. Victoria's eyes immediately lit up. This is our biggest opportunity. Our opportunity. Jason smiled. You mean your company's future? She looked at him. You've worked hard. He lowered his head slightly. I only succeeded because you trusted me. I almost laughed when I heard that. Because Jason was good. Very good. He knew exactly what to say. He never directly attacked me. He never openly crossed a line. He just slowly moved into the empty space Victoria created, and Victoria let him. Later that afternoon, Victoria called me. I was sitting in a conference room reviewing financial reports. My assistant placed the phone in front of me. Mrs. Carter. I looked at the screen. Victoria. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Hello. Her voice came immediately. You ignored my calls. I smiled slightly. Interesting. Not are you okay? Not where are you? Her first concern was that I didn't answer. I was busy. Busy? Yes. With what? I looked around the room. People who knew my real identity were waiting for my instructions. People who understood my value. People who respected my decisions. I said. Work. There was silence, because she had never heard me say that before. Not seriously. I in her mind I didn't have work. I had free time. I had nothing important to do. She sighed. Ethan. We need to talk. About what? About last night. I waited to finally say an apology. Maybe. But then she said, you owe Jason an apology. I closed my eyes. For a moment that I wondered if I had heard correctly. What? You damaged his car. That I already explained what happened, but you still caused the problem. That I laughed quietly. Victoria, a deal you hear yourself? What? You called me after 2 days. And the first thing you say is that I need to apologize to him. He was upset, and I wasn't. Her voice became impatient. Ethan, stop turning everything into a competition. Not a competition? Yes, she lowered her voice. Not everything is about you. That sentence stayed in my mind. Not everything is about you. She was right. The world didn't revolve around me, but my marriage was supposed to. At least that I thought it was. I said, you know what? What? I'll apologize. She sounded relieved. Good, but not because you asked. Then why? Because I want to apologize for something. What? I looked at the documents on my desk, the files showing exactly how much of Victoria's empire existed because of me. The contracts, the patents, the investments, everything. She forgot. I apologize for spending 5 years protecting someone who never protected me. Silence. Then, you're being dramatic. No, I stood up. That I'm finally being honest. Ethan and I ended the call. That evening, Victoria held a celebration dinner. The announcement of the Orion project was everywhere: business magazines, financial reporters, industry insiders. Everyone believed Jason was about to become the next star in the technology world. The funny thing? Nobody knew the deal was already dead. Not yet, because I hadn't announced it. That I wanted to see something. That I wanted to see how far Victoria would go. The dinner was held at one of the most expensive hotels in the city. Victoria stood on stage. Jason stood beside her, and hundreds of guests watched. She smiled confidently. Tonight represents a new beginning. Applause filled the room. This partnership will change our company forever. More applause. Then she looked toward Jason. And I want to personally thank the person who made this possible. Jason stepped forward. Everyone clapped. Victoria continued. Jason has proven that loyalty and ability matter more than anything else. Loyalty. That word almost made me laugh, because I wondered if she knew what real loyalty looked like. Real loyalty was staying when nobody believed in her. Real loyalty was risking everything when she had nothing. Real loyalty was not standing next to someone after success arrived. It was standing there before success existed. But Victoria didn't see that. She only saw the person beside her now. Jason took the microphone. Thank you. Victoria. He looked emotional. I couldn't have achieved this without you. Then he said, and without the support of everyone who believed in this company. Everyone applauded. Everyone except me, because I knew the next morning that this room would feel very different. At 11:45 p.m. my phone received a notification. A message from my executive team. The official cancellation notice has been prepared. I looked at the screen. Then another message appeared. The announcement will affect Victoria Carter's company immediately. I stared at the name. Victoria Carter. My wife. The woman who locked me outside. The woman who believed Jason was the future. The woman who forgot who built the foundation beneath her empire. I typed one reply. Send it tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I put down my phone. For 5 years I protected Victoria from every storm. Tomorrow morning, she would finally experience one without me. At 8:59 a.m. the next day, Victoria was preparing to announce the 800 million partnership. At 9 a.m. the world received a different announcement. Orion project suspended. Strategic partnership terminated. Future cooperation under review. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Investors panicked. Executives started calling. News outlets began asking questions. And inside Victoria's office, her smile disappeared. Because for the first time in years, she realized something was wrong. Something she could not fix. Something Jason could not fix. Something nobody could fix. Except the person she had locked outside 2 nights ago. Her husband. Me. Victoria always believed she could control any situation. That was why she became one of the youngest billion-dollar CEOs in the industry. She was decisive, ruthless, confident. When competitors attacked, she fought back. When investors questioned her, she proved them wrong. When employees doubted her, she made them regret it. The entire business world knew one thing about Victoria Carter. She never lost. But there was one thing she never understood: that a person can survive losing money, that a person can survive losing a company. But losing the person who quietly protected everything behind the scenes, that was something different. And Victoria was about to learn that lesson. At 9:03 a.m. her office was already in chaos. Victoria, Jason, rushed through the door. His face was pale, The Orion partnership, she looked up from her desk. What happened? Jason placed his tablet in front of her. The headline was impossible to ignore. 800 million Orion deal suspended. Victoria stared at the screen. For the first time in years that her confident expression disappeared. Who did this? Jason swallowed. The other side said they are reviewing the agreement. Why? They didn't explain. Victoria stood up. Call them. I already tried. And Jason hesitated. They won't answer. That was impossible. The Orion project was supposed to be their biggest achievement. For 6 months, Jason had personally handled negotiations. Victoria trusted him completely. She had even told the board, if Jason cannot secure this partnership, nobody can. But now the deal was gone. Victoria walked toward the window. Find out who changed their decision. Jason nodded. I will. Then he paused. Victoria, what? Do you think this has something to do with Ethan? The room became quiet. Victoria turned around. Why would you say that? Jason looked uncomfortable. I don't know. But he did. And Victoria knew it. Because both of them understood one thing, that Ethan's reaction the previous night had been strange, too calm, too confident, like he knew something. But Victoria immediately rejected the thought that no, impossible. Ethan was just angry, that he was emotional, that he was hurt. That was all. She knew him. Or at least she thought she did. At the same time, I was sitting in my office watching the news. My assistant placed a report on my desk. Mr. Carter, Victoria Carter's company stock has already dropped 7. I nodded. Expected. The board is asking questions. Expected. Jason is trying to contact the investors. I looked at the report. Also expected. My assistant hesitated. Do you regret it? I looked up. Regret what? Ending the partnership. I was silent for a moment. Then I answered. No, because this was never about revenge. If I wanted revenge, I could have destroyed Victoria years ago. I had the ability, the resources, the connections. But I never did, because she was my wife. I protected her because I loved her, not because I wanted control. That was the difference between me and people like Jason. Jason wanted power. I wanted Victoria to succeed. But somewhere along the way, she confused my kindness with weakness. 5 years earlier, Victoria had nothing. I still remembered the first time I met her. She was sitting alone in a small office surrounded by unfinished designs and unpaid bills. Everyone told her the company would fail. Everyone told her the technology was impossible. Everyone except me. I walked into that office and asked, why are you still fighting? She looked at me and said, because one day. I want people to know I was right. I smiled. Then I'll help you prove it. That time. She didn't know who I really was. I never told her. I didn't want her to love my name. I wanted her to love me. Just Ethan, not the chairman, not the investor, not the person whose decisions moved billions of dollars. Just the man who made her coffee. The man who stayed awake helping her analyze data. The man who believed in her when nobody else did. And for a long time that was enough. Until success changed everything. The first change happened after her company's IPO. Before that day, Victoria always introduced me as the person who believed in me before anyone else. After that day, she started introducing me as my husband. The difference was small, but I noticed. Because before success. I was part of her story. After success. I became a detail in the background. Then Jason appeared at first. I didn't think anything about him. He was young, ambitious, hardworking. Victoria said, Jason reminds me of myself when I was starting. I believed her. I even helped him. That was my mistake. I gave him opportunities. I gave him access. I gave him advice. I thought I was helping my wife's employee. I didn't realize I was creating the person who would eventually try to replace me. 2 weeks after Jason joined the company, Victoria came home excited. Ethan, Jason solved the supply issue. I smiled. That's great. He's talented. I agree. She looked at me. You don't sound impressed. I am. No, you're not. I laughed. Victoria, I'm happy someone can help you. But she misunderstood. She thought I was threatened. That was the beginning. Every time Jason achieved something, Victoria became more distant from me. Every time I warned her about his intentions, but she defended him. You're jealous. You don't understand business. You don't see his value. Those words became familiar, until eventually she stopped seeing me as someone who supported her. She started seeing me as someone who held her back. Back in the present. My assistant interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Carter. Yes? The board requested an emergency meeting. I stood up. Let's go. The meeting room was already full. Executives, investors, legal advisors. Everyone knew something serious had happened. The moment I entered, everyone stood. Chairman Carter. I nodded. Sit. The screen displayed Victoria's company information. Point one executive spoke. The Orion suspension created instability. How much? Estimated loss of future value. Several $billion. I nodded. Continue. The main issue is not the cancellation. What is the reason? The executive changed the slide. A document appeared. Concerns regarding project leadership. I looked at the names. Jason. Victoria. Both. Interesting. Point one investor said. The partnership side believes the project relied too heavily on Jason's personal representation. Another added. They are questioning whether the company's internal structure is stable. I leaned back. So that was the real problem. Not the deal. Trust. A company could survive losing money, but no investor wanted to support a company where leadership depended on the wrong person. And Victoria had made her choice. She trusted Jason. Not me. At noon. Victoria finally called again. This time. I answered. Hello. Her voice was different. Not angry. Not confident. Uncertain. Ethan. Yes? Where are you? I smiled slightly. Why? I need to see you. About what? There was a pause. Then, the Orion deal. I looked at the clock. Of course. Not us. Not our marriage. Not the night she locked me outside. Business. Always business. I said. I don't think I can help. Her voice immediately changed. What do you mean? I mean, I looked out the window. For the first time. Victoria. You need to solve your own problems. Silence. Then she whispered. Ethan. What do you know? I smiled. Because that was the first time she asked me that question. Not because she cared. Because she was afraid. And fear was the first emotion she had shown me in a long time. I answered. Nothing. A lie. But a necessary one. Because she still wasn't ready to know the truth. Not yet. She needed to understand something. First, the man she ignored for 5 years was never ordinary. Victoria stayed silent for several seconds after I said those words. For the first time. Victoria. You need to solve your own problems. I knew those words hurt her. Not because they were cruel. Because they were true. For years. Whenever Victoria faced trouble. I was the first person she called. When her first investor suddenly backed out. She called me at midnight. When her supplier doubled the price of raw materials. She called me before contacting anyone else. When the company nearly ran out of money before its first major breakthrough, she sat in my arms and cried. Back then, she never thought I was useless. Back then, she knew exactly what I was worth. But success had a strange effect on people. Sometimes the higher they climbed, the easier it became to forget who helped them get there. Ethan. She finally said. I know you're angry. I looked at my phone. Angry. That was the easiest word for people to use. Because if I was only angry. Then everything could return to normal. An apology. A hug. A promise. Then another mistake. Another excuse. Another time she chose someone else. But this wasn't anger anymore. Anger meant I still expected something. I didn't. I'm not angry. She paused. Then what are you? I looked at the city below my office. The same city where everyone knew Victoria Carter, the brilliant CEO. The woman who built an empire. Nobody knew Ethan Carter, the man who quietly built the foundation beneath it. I'm tired. Her voice softened. Tired of what? I answered honestly. Tired of being the only person who remembers we're married. The silence afterward lasted longer than I expected. For once, Victoria had no argument, no business explanation, no excuse. Then she said, Can we meet tonight? I almost said no. But I wanted to see something. I wanted to know whether she wanted her husband back or whether she simply needed the person who could save her company. Fine. Her voice relaxed slightly. 7 o'clock. Where? Our usual restaurant. I smiled. Our usual restaurant. A place we had not visited in almost a year. A place where we once celebrated every small victory before her company became more important than everything else. Okay. I ended the call. It's exactly 7 p.m. Victoria arrived. I was already there. She looked different. Not like the confident CEO who stood on magazine covers. Not like the woman who controlled thousands of employees. She looked tired, worried. For a moment I almost saw the old Victoria, the woman who used to hold my hand when she was scared. But then she sat down, and the first sentence she said destroyed that illusion. Ethan. I need your help. Not, I'm sorry. Not, are you okay? Not, I was wrong. Help. That was all she wanted. I leaned back. With what? The Orion project. Of course. I looked at her. Why do you think I can help? She hesitated, because she knew. Somewhere deep down she knew I was not as ordinary as she thought. I don't know. I smiled. Then why are you here? She looked frustrated. Because I know you don't know. I shook my head. You know the version of me you created. What does that mean? It means you think I'm the husband who stays home, waits for you, supports you, and never asks for anything. Her eyes moved. Ethan, but you forgot something. What? I was a person before I became your husband. She looked at me. For the first time in a long time, she looked curious, not annoyed, not dismissive. Curious. What are you saying? I took a sip of water. I'm saying maybe you never really knew me. Before Victoria could answer, her phone rang. Jason. I saw his name on the screen. She immediately reached for it. I laughed quietly. She stopped. What? Nothing that you're upset because I answered. No, I looked at the phone. I'm just impressed. Why what? That even now, when we're supposed to talk about us, he still comes first. Her expression changed. That's not fair, isn't it? She looked at the screen, then back at me. Finally, she rejected the call. For a second, I thought maybe she understood. Maybe. Then she said, Jason is under a lot of pressure. I closed my eyes. There it was again. Jason. Always protecting Jason. I asked. Victoria, if I disappeared tomorrow, would you notice? Her face changed. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Of course I would notice. Would you? She looked offended. Ethan, don't say things like that. Why? Because it's unnecessary. I nodded slowly. That answer told me everything. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of the conversation. The next morning the crisis became worse. Victoria's company stock dropped another 11.3. Major analysts downgraded their expectations. The board demanded answers. And Jason started panicking. I watched everything unfold through reports. Not because I wanted to enjoy her failure, because I needed to understand what kind of person Victoria had become. A message appeared from my assistant. Jason has requested a private meeting with several investors. I smiled. Exactly as expected, he's trying to save himself. My assistant looked confused. Sir? Nothing. The problem with people like Jason was simple. When things were going well, they talked about teamwork. When things went wrong, they looked for someone else to blame. And Jason had already started searching. Inside Victoria's company, Jason was doing exactly that. Victoria, we need to control the narrative. She looked at him. What narrative? The Orion suspension wasn't because of us. Then why? Jason hesitated. The investment group changed their requirements. Victoria narrowed her eyes. You told me everything was confirmed. It was. Then why did they suddenly cancel? Jason looked away. I'm investigating. For the first time, Victoria noticed something. Jason was not confident anymore. The man who always had answers suddenly had excuses. She remembered something I said. You don't know him as well as you think. That sentence bothered her because she hated admitting I might be right. 3 days later, Victoria called me again. This time, her voice was completely different. Ethan. Yes? Where did you learn business? I smiled. What? I mean, she struggled. You always knew things before they happened. I stayed silent. Because the truth was simple. I didn't suddenly become capable, and I had always been capable. She just stopped looking. Everyone has things they're good at. That's not an answer to no. I agreed. It isn't. Then tell me. I looked at the documents on my desk. The documents that could reveal everything. My identity, my ownership, my influence. But not yet. Not until she understood the difference between loving someone and using someone. So I said. Victoria, does it matter? Yes. Why? She was silent. Finally. Because I feel like I don't know you anymore. Those words surprised me. Because that was exactly how I had felt for years. I said. Maybe now you understand how I felt. That night something happened that neither Victoria nor Jason expected. The investment group released a statement. A short statement. Only one sentence. The Orion project was suspended due to concerns regarding unauthorized representation and misleading claims made during negotiations. Within minutes, the entire industry exploded. Unauthorized representation. Misleading claims. Those words were dangerous. Victoria immediately called Jason. He answered quickly. Victoria. Jason. Her voice was cold. What exactly did you tell the investors? Silence. Jason. For the first time, she heard fear in his voice, and that scared her, because Jason had always been fearless, confident, certain, until now. Come to my office. Victoria now. She ended the call. Then she looked at the report again. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Because the only person who seemed completely calm during the entire crisis was Ethan, her husband. The man she thought knew nothing about business. The man she locked outside. The man she ignored. And for the first time, a terrifying possibility appeared in her mind. What if Ethan wasn't the person she thought he was? What if she had spent 5 years underestimating the one person who was always standing beside her? For 5 years, Victoria believed she built everything alone. She believed every victory belonged to her. Every award, every headline, every billion-dollar valuation. She stood on stage and accepted applause from thousands of people, while I stood somewhere behind the crowd. And I was fine with that. Because I never helped her because I wanted recognition, that I helped her because she was my wife. But there was a difference between humility and being forgotten, that I could accept not receiving credit, that I could not accept being treated like I was worthless. And after the night she locked me outside for protecting myself against Jason's accusation, that I finally made a decision that I was done hiding. Not completely. Not yet. But I was done carrying an empire that no longer respected me. The next morning, Victoria arrived at her company early. The entire building was nervous. Employees whispered in the hallways. Executives avoided eye contact. Everyone knew the Orion project was in trouble. But nobody knew the real reason. Victoria entered the conference room. Jason was already there. Victoria. She looked at him. What happened? Jason immediately stood. That I'm trying to fix it. If that's not what I asked. Her voice was colder than usual. What happened? Jason hesitated. That we may have misunderstood some of the investors' requirements. Victoria stared at him. May have? Jason lowered his voice. I thought the final approval was guaranteed. You told me it was guaranteed. That I believed it was. That answer annoyed her. Because Victoria hated uncertainty. She built her entire career by controlling every detail. And now the person she trusted most had no answers. That we need a solution. Jason nodded. That I'm contacting everyone. Victoria looked at him. Everyone? Yes. Except one person. Jason knew who she meant. Ethan. That afternoon, Victoria came home earlier than usual. I was sitting in my study. Not the one she usually used, a private room she rarely entered. She knocked. I looked up. Come in. She walked inside. For a few seconds, she simply looked at me, like she was trying to understand a stranger. What? She sat down. Why didn't you tell me? I smiled. Slightly. Tell you what? That you understand business. That I closed the document in front of me. That I never said I didn't. You never said you did. Because you never asked. That answer made her silent. Because it was true. For years, Victoria never asked about my work. She only asked, can you pick up dinner? Can you handle this? Can you help me review this? She wanted my support. But she never wanted to know who I was. I always thought. She stopped. What? She looked away. I thought you were comfortable living quietly. I nodded. I was. Then why change now? I looked at her. Because I realized something. What? I wasn't living quietly. I paused. That I was disappearing. Her expression changed. She wanted to say something. That I could see it. But pride stopped her. Victoria was not someone who apologized easily. She could apologize to investors. She could apologize to employees. But admitting she hurt me, that was harder. Finally, she said, Ethan. I need you to help me. There it was. The same sentence. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Help. I leaned back. With what? The Orion situation. I looked at her. You mean the project Jason handled? Her face tightened. Yes. Then Jason should solve it. He's trying. Then trust him. The words surprised her, because they were the same words she had used against me. That you're doing this on purpose. No, I shook my head. I'm just repeating your logic. She looked hurt. And for a moment I almost felt guilty. Almost. Then I remembered the night outside. The locked door. The way she looked at Jason. The way she looked at me. The choice she made. That evening I signed 3 documents. The first removed my private investment company from several of Victoria's hidden financial structures. The second canceled my personal guarantees. The third transferred my remaining support obligations to independent management. My assistant looked at me. Are you sure? Yes. Victoria Carter's company may struggle. I know. You built half of this. I looked at the signature. No, I corrected him. I built the foundation. A pause. But she chose who she wanted standing. On top of it. 2 days later, Victoria received the first warning. A major supplier requested a review. Then another. Then another. Nothing collapsed immediately. That would have been too easy. The smartest way to reveal a weak foundation was not to destroy it. It was to stop holding it up. Victoria noticed small problems, delayed approvals, unexpected questions, partners suddenly becoming cautious. She couldn't understand why. Because everything looked normal until one person disappeared from the Equation.me. Meanwhile, Jason became increasingly desperate. He knew something was wrong because every channel he used to rescue the Orion deal suddenly stopped working. Every investor who once praised him became distant. Every person who once returned his calls started ignoring him. Finally, he confronted Victoria. "This is because of Ethan." Victoria frowned. "What? He's doing something. Why would he?" Jason looked at her. "Because he's angry." She shook her head. "No, you don't know him." That sentence bothered her because it sounded familiar, almost exactly like something she had told me. That night, Victoria sat alone in the house, the same house where she had locked me outside. She looked around. For the first time, she noticed something. Almost everything in that house was connected to me. The furniture, the design choices, the security system, the investments, the small details she never paid attention to. She remembered something from years ago. When they first moved in, she asked, "Why does this place feel different?" I smiled. "Because I made sure it feels like home." Back then, she hugged me. Now she sat alone. And she finally realized something, that I was never just living in her world, that I was helping create it. The next morning, Victoria received an invitation to a private business summit. The guest list included the most influential investors in the industry. At the bottom of the invitation was one name. The person everyone wanted to meet. The mysterious chairman behind several major investments. Ethan Carter. Victoria froze because the name was familiar. Too familiar. She stared at the invitation for a long time, then whispered, "No," for the first time. A terrifying thought entered her mind. What if her husband was not the man she thought he was? Victoria spent the entire night investigating one name. Ethan Carter. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. There were many people named Ethan Carter. Many successful businessmen, many investors, many executives. That it couldn't possibly be her husband. The man who cooked dinner when she worked late. The man who waited for her after every business trip. The man who never attended a single public event with her. That Ethan, the mysterious chairman controlling billions? Impossible. But the more she investigated, the more terrified she became. The next morning, Victoria arrived at her office earlier than usual. Jason was already waiting. "You look tired." She ignored his comment. "Jason, show me the original Orion investment documents." That he froze slightly. "Why?" "Because I asked." Jason immediately opened the file. Victoria checked every page carefully. The investor group, the ownership structure, the approval chain. Then she saw something. A signature. Not obvious, not large, hidden in the final authorization section. Her fingers stopped. "What is this?" Jason looked at the document. "What?" "This signature." He became quiet. "It's just a final authorization." "Whose?" Jason avoided her eyes. "I'm not sure." Victoria looked at him. "You handled this project for 6 months, and you don't know?" Jason forced a smile. "I'll check." She closed the file. "No, what?" "I'll check myself." For the first time, Victoria didn't trust Jason's answer, and that feeling scared her. At noon, Victoria came to my apartment, the one she never knew existed. The receptionist greeted her. "Ms. Carter." Victoria stopped. She looked around. "How do you know me?" The receptionist smiled politely. "Everyone here knows you." Her expression changed. "Why?" The receptionist hesitated, then answered, "Because you're Mr. Carter's wife." Victoria froze. "Mr. Carter, not Ethan." "Mr. Carter." She walked into the private elevator. Her heart was beating faster with every floor. For 5 years, she thought she knew everything about me. But suddenly, she realized she knew almost nothing. The elevator doors opened. My assistant was waiting. "Ms. Carter, where is Ethan?" "Chairman Carter is in a meeting." The title hit her harder than expected. "Chairman." She looked at him. "You call him that?" "Yes." "Why?" My assistant looked confused. "Because that is who he is." I was inside the conference room when Victoria entered. Everyone immediately stopped talking. Not because she was Victoria Carter, but because they knew the relationship between us. I looked at her. "Why are you here?" She stared at me. Not angry, not confident, just shocked. "Ethan." I dismissed everyone. The room became quiet. She looked around. The documents, the screens, the company information, everything she never knew existed. "How long?" I didn't answer. "How long have you been doing this?" "Doing what?" "Being." She struggled to say it. "Being this person." I looked at her. "I have always been this person." That answer hurt her, because it meant the truth was simple. "I didn't change." She did. "You lied to me." I smiled sadly. "No, I didn't hide anything. You never told me." "Did you ever ask?" She became silent. Again, because she knew. She never did. Victoria sat down. For the first time she looked smaller, not weak, just lost. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at her. Would it have changed anything? Yes. Would it? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because deep down she knew that if she had known who I was, she would have treated me differently. And that was exactly the problem, that I never wanted someone to respect me because of money, that I wanted my wife to respect me because I was Ethan, not because I controlled billions. She looked at me. The Orion deal, yes? Was it you? I stayed silent. That was enough. That Victoria's face changed. You stopped it. That I paused it. Why? I looked at her. Because you trusted the wrong person. She immediately defended herself. Jason worked hard to did I. The room became silent. That I continued. Jason worked hard for 6 months. That I pointed at the documents. I spent 5 years building the foundation that allowed your company to reach this point. Victoria looked away. That I never asked you to do that. No, I nodded. You didn't. That sentence hurt her because she realized something. The person who loved her the most was the person she valued the least. That night, Victoria returned home alone. Jason called repeatedly. She ignored every call. For the first time she questioned him. Not his ability, his intentions, because she remembered something that a few months earlier, Jason had said. Victoria, that sometimes people around you don't deserve your trust. The time that she thought he was talking about competitors. Now she wondered, was he talking about me? The next day, Jason finally confronted her. You met Ethan. Victoria looked at him. How do you know? Jason's face changed. That I guessed. No, her voice was cold. You knew. Silence. Jason, he sighed. Victoria, listen to me. No, she stood. You listen. Jason looked surprised. She continued. You told me Ethan was just an ordinary person. He is. The answer came too quickly. Victoria noticed that I see. Jason didn't respond. That was the answer. Later that afternoon, the board meeting began. Everyone expected Victoria to defend Jason. Instead, she asked one question. Who originally introduced the Orion opportunity? Silence. Jason looked uncomfortable. That I don't remember. Victoria looked at him. You don't remember? No, she opened a file. Because the original connection came through Ethan. Jason's expression changed. Victoria continued. The investment network, the supplier relationships, the technology partners, all of them. She looked directly at Jason. You knew. Jason's face became pale. I didn't know everything. But you knew enough. That night, Victoria stood outside my office. She wanted to apologize. She wanted to explain. She wanted to say she was wrong. But when the door opened, she saw something that stopped her. A screen showing the updated Orion project status. The project wasn't dead. IT was being transferred to another company, another team, another leader. To me, Victoria whispered. Ethan, I looked at her. Yes? Are you taking everything back? I answered calmly. No, then what are you doing? I looked at her. I'm taking responsibility for what I built. And for the first time, Victoria understood. She didn't lose the Orion deal because of a competitor. She didn't lose it because of bad luck. She lost it because she pushed away the one person who had always protected her. Victoria spent the next few days trying to understand what had happened. Not just with the Orion project, with me. That was the part she struggled with the most. The business crisis was something she could analyze. Numbers, contracts, investors, risk, those things made sense. But me? I didn't. For 5 years, she believed I was the simplest part of her life, the one thing she never needed to worry about. Now she realized I was the one person she had never truly understood. The first thing Victoria did was investigate everything. She reviewed old company records, investment documents, partnership agreements, technology licenses, everything. And every time she looked deeper, the same answer appeared. Ethan Carter, an MY name, was everywhere. Not on the headlines, not in interviews, not on magazine covers, but behind every important decision. The first investment, the first international partnership, the first major technology agreement, the expansion plan, the acquisition strategy, everything. Victoria sat in her office for hours. Her assistant walked in.ms. Carter? She didn't respond. Ms. Carter? Finally, she looked up. Yes? The board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Victoria looked at the documents in front of her, then quietly asked, Did you know? Her assistant froze. Know what? That Ethan was. She stopped. She still couldn't say it. That her husband was the person everyone wanted to meet, the person investors respected, the person who had built the foundation of her success. Her assistant lowered her eyes that I knew he was more capable than people thought. Victoria looked at her. How long? A long time. The answer hurt, because it meant everyone saw it, everyone except her. The board meeting was worse than expected. The moment Victoria entered, nobody spoke. That was unusual. Normally, people waited for her instructions. Today, they waited for explanations. One board member opened the meeting. Victoria, we need answers. She sat down. I know. The Orion project was our biggest opportunity. I know. And now the investors have transferred negotiations to Carter Holdings. Silence. Victoria looked at the screen. Carter Holdings, MY company. The company she had unknowingly depended on for years. One board member asked. Did you know Ethan Carter personally? Victoria's fingers tightened. Yes. How? She looked down. He's my husband. The room became silent. Everyone knew. But nobody expected that answer. Meanwhile, Jason was becoming desperate because he understood something Victoria didn't. The situation was no longer about the Orion deal. It was about trust. And once investors lost trust, money was easy to replace. Reputation was not. Jason requested a private meeting with Victoria. She agreed. But this time, she didn't look at him the same way. Jason noticed immediately that you're angry. No, then what? She looked at him. I'm disappointed. That word hurt him more, because anger meant there was still emotion. Disappointment meant trust was gone. Victoria, I can explain. Explain what? The situation. Which situation? She opened a file. Why did you tell me Ethan was irrelevant? Jason became silent. I never said that. You implied it. I was protecting you. Victoria laughed. Protecting me? Yes. From what? Jason looked uncomfortable. From distractions. That answer made everything clear. He never saw me as a threat because I was dangerous. He saw me as a threat because I existed. Because as long as I was there, he could never become the person beside Victoria. That evening, I received a message from Victoria. Can we talk? I looked at it, then ignored it. A second message arrived. Please. Another one. I need to understand. I stared at the screen. 5 years ago, I would have answered immediately, no matter what. Because when someone I loved needed me, I was always there. But now, I wasn't sure whether she needed me or the person who could save her company. The next morning, Victoria came to my office again. This time, she didn't walk in confidently. She waited outside. My assistant told me. Miss Carter is here. I looked at the clock. Let her in. She entered. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, I owe you an apology. I looked at her. Do you? She nodded. Yes. For what? Her eyes became red. For everything. That was the first time I saw Victoria struggle to find words. I thought you were just. She stopped. Just what? She looked away. Ordinary. I nodded. But that's what hurt the most. She looked at me. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. I know. No, I shook my head. You know now? She became silent, because that was the truth. She didn't understand when she locked the door. She didn't understand when she chose Jason. She only understood when she discovered my value, and that difference mattered. She sat down. What happens now? I looked at her. What do you mean? The company. I smiled slightly. There it is. What? The question you really came to ask. Her face changed. I came because of you. Did you? She looked hurt. Yes. Then why did you ask about the company first? Silence. She had no answer. Because even now, even after everything, business still came first. 3 days later, the biggest news in the industry appeared. Carter Holdings officially takes over. Orion project. The same project everyone thought belonged to Victoria. The same project Jason believed would make him famous. Now everyone wanted to know one thing. Who was Ethan Carter? The mysterious chairman. The person who controlled the future of the industry. The person who had been hidden for years. And the most shocking part. His wife was Victoria Carter. The billionaire CEO who never realized the man beside her was the person everyone else wanted to meet. Victoria watched the news from her office.my photo appeared on the screen. Not a wedding photo. Not a private photo. A business profile. Chairman Ethan Carter. She stared at the screen. Then whispered, I never even knew you. And that was the moment she finally understood. The biggest mistake she made wasn't choosing Jason. It wasn't ignoring me. It wasn't locking me outside. The biggest mistake was believing she was the one who gave me value. When the truth was I was the reason she had value in the first place. The world learned my identity in one morning. But Victoria learned the truth too late. For years, she thought she understood every part of my life. She knew what time I woke up. She knew what food I liked. She knew my habits. She knew the small details, but she never knew the most important thing, who I really was. And the reason was simple. She never cared enough to ask. After the news was released that Victoria's company became the center of attention. Not because of success, because everyone wanted answers. Reporters wanted to know how the CEO of a billion-dollar company could be married to one of the most influential investors in the world without knowing his real identity. Investors wanted to know whether Victoria had been making decisions independently, and employees wanted to know what would happen next. But the person most shocked was Victoria herself. She sat in her office watching the news. My face appeared on the screen. Not as her husband. Asst Chairman Ethan Carter. The headline read, "The man behind multiple tech empires finally revealed." Victoria stared at the screen. She didn't blink. She didn't move. Because suddenly every memory from the past 5 years had a different meaning. She remembered the first year of marriage, when her company was almost bankrupt. She remembered crying in front of me that I think I failed. And I told her, "You haven't failed. You just haven't reached the result yet." She remembered how the next morning a new investor suddenly appeared. How a supplier suddenly agreed to cooperate. How impossible problems suddenly disappeared. Back then she thought it was luck. Now she knew it was me. Jason walked into her office. "Victoria." She didn't answer. He looked at the screen, then immediately understood. "You found out." Victoria slowly turned. "You knew?" Jason froze. "What? You knew who Ethan was? No, don't lie." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Jason looked uncomfortable. "I knew he was connected." "Connected?" Victoria stood. "You knew my husband controlled the investors we were begging for." Jason said nothing. "You knew he had the resources to solve problems we spent months fighting." Silence. "And you still let me believe he was useless." Jason finally spoke. "Victoria, listen to me. No." She shook her head. "I listened to you for 3 years." That sentence hit him. Because it was true. She had trusted every word he said, every suggestion, every warning, every opinion about me. And now she realized those words had shaped her entire view of her husband. Jason tried to defend himself. "I never forced you to treat Ethan badly." Victoria looked at him. No, she nodded. "You didn't." Then she continued. "But you enjoyed it." Jason's expression changed. "Victoria, you enjoyed being the person I trusted." Silence. "You enjoyed standing beside me while Ethan stayed behind." Jason lowered his voice. "I cared about you." Victoria laughed. A cold laugh. "Did you?" She looked at him. "Or did you care about becoming Ethan?" Jason's face turned pale. Because she had finally seen the truth. He never wanted to work with Victoria. He wanted to replace me. That afternoon, Victoria came to my office again. This time she didn't act like a CEO. She acted like someone who had lost something important. "Ethan." I looked up. "Yes?" She stood there quietly. "I'm sorry I waited." Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted to know if this apology was real. She continued. "I was wrong about you." I nodded. "Yes." Her eyes moved. "You're not even going to say it's okay?" "No." The answer surprised her. "Why?" "Because it's not." She looked hurt. I continued. "Victoria, you made a mistake." She nodded. "I know." "No." I looked at her. "You made a choice." Silence. "A mistake happens once." I continued. "But you chose him every single time." Her eyes became red because she knew I was right. She sat down. "I thought you didn't care about my company." I smiled. "I cared more than anyone." "Then why hide everything?" "Because I wanted one person in this world to love Ethan." She looked at me. "Not Chairman Carter. Not the billionaire. Not the investor. Ethan." "I didn't want someone to love me because of my money." My voice became quieter. "I wanted my wife to love the man who made coffee for her during late nights." Victoria lowered her head. That hurt her more than any accusation. Because she knew that if she had known my identity from the beginning, she would have treated me differently. And that was exactly what I didn't want. The next week, the board of Victoria's company held an emergency meeting. The main topic, leadership. Point one board member said, "Victoria, the company needs stability." She looked around the room. People who once admired her now questioned her. "I understand." Another executive asked, "Will Carter Holdings become involved?" Victoria stayed silent because she didn't know. And for the first time in her career, she had no control. Meanwhile, Jason's situation became worse. The investigation into the Orion project continued. Several documents had questionable information. Several decisions were made without proper approval. And the person who benefited the most was Jason, the same man Victoria defended, the same man she trusted over me. Now everyone saw what I saw. Point one night, Victoria called me. I answered. Hello. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, do you hate me? The question surprised me. No, then why are you doing this? Doing what? Walking away. That I looked outside. Because that was the hardest truth, that I wasn't punishing her, that I wasn't destroying her, I was simply leaving. I'm not walking away because I hate you. That I paused. That I'm walking away because I finally respect myself. She didn't speak, and I knew those words would stay with her. The next morning, Victoria received another piece of news. Jason had resigned. But before leaving, that he sent one final message. Not to her, to the media. That a statement claiming he was the victim of internal conflicts, trying to protect himself, trying to rewrite the story. Victoria read the statement, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because she finally understood. The person she trusted to stand beside her was the first person to run when things collapsed. That evening, Victoria stood in front of our house, the same house where she locked me outside. She touched the door and remembered that night, the night she chose Jason, the night she believed I was the problem. Now she understood. The person outside the door was the person who had always been protecting everything inside. She whispered, Ethan, but there was no answer. For the first time, Victoria Carter knew what it felt like to be the one waiting outside. Jason always believed he was smarter than everyone else. That was his biggest weakness. He was talented, ambitious, hardworking, but he confused opportunity with ownership. That he thought, because he stood next to Victoria during her success, he deserved everything she built. He forgot one important thing. Standing beside a throne did not make someone a king. After Jason's public statement that the situation became worse, investors who had once praised him began distancing themselves. Companies that had invited him to private meetings stopped responding. The same people who once called him a genius suddenly acted like they had never heard his name. Jason couldn't understand it. He believed he was the future of Victoria's company. He believed he was untouchable. Until he discovered the truth. Most of his power came from borrowed trust, not his own ability. Jason called me 3 days later. That I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. Ethan, his voice was different. No confidence, no arrogance, just frustration. What do you want? There was a pause. That I need to talk. About what? About everything. That I looked at the documents on my desk. Everything is already cleared. No, his voice became urgent. You don't understand. That I almost smiled. That sentence coming from him was interesting. That you're right. That I said that I don't understand. You think I wanted this? I stayed silent. Jason continued. I never wanted to hurt you. That was the funniest thing he had said, because people like Jason always said the same thing. They never wanted the consequences, but they always wanted the benefits. You didn't want to hurt me? No, then what did you want? Silence. Finally, I wanted recognition. There it was, the truth. Not love, not loyalty, recognition. Jason wanted the world to see him, and he believed replacing me was the easiest way. You wanted what belonged to someone else. No, he quickly replied. I earned my position. I nodded. You earned opportunities. I corrected him. But you mistook opportunities for ownership. The next day, Jason tried to meet Victoria. She refused, but he kept calling. Finally, she agreed. Not because she trusted him, because she wanted answers. They met in a private room. Victoria looked at him. Why? Jason looked confused. Why what? Why did you let me believe Ethan was useless? He looked away. I never said that. You didn't have to. Her voice was cold. You created that idea. Jason stayed silent. You were always there when I complained about Ethan. Yes, you always agreed with me. Yes, because it benefited you. Jason looked at her. Victoria, I cared about you. She laughed. You cared about becoming the person beside me. His face changed, because she was right. Jason finally admitted something. I was jealous. Victoria looked at him. Of Ethan? Yes. Why? Jason smiled bitterly. Because no matter what I achieved, you always talked about him. Victoria froze. Because she realized something. She had talked about me, but not in a good way. She complained about me. She said I didn't understand her world. She said I was too ordinary. But Jason heard something different. He heard that I mattered, and he wanted that position. Meanwhile, I continued rebuilding the Orion project. Unlike Victoria's company, my team didn't need publicity, that we didn't need celebrations, that we focused on results. Within 2 weeks, several major partners returned. The project that everyone thought was dead became stronger than before. The difference was leadership, that a strong company could survive mistakes, but it couldn't survive the wrong person making decisions. Victoria watched everything happen. She watched my company succeed. She watched the same investors who abandoned her project now waiting for my approval. And she finally understood something that I was never competing with her. I was never trying to control her. I was trying to protect her. The person she feared losing control to was the person who never wanted control over her. Point one evening, Victoria came to my office. She looked exhausted. Ethan. I looked up. Yes? Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Did you ever regret helping me? The question surprised me, because it was the first time she asked about me. Not the company. Not the money that I thought for a moment. No, she looked surprised. No, I don't regret helping you. Then what do you regret? I looked at her. I regret not realizing sooner that love without respect is not enough. Her eyes lowered. That hurt. But it was true. Victoria sat quietly. Then she said, I lost you because I thought I had already won. I looked at her. What do you mean? She smiled sadly. When I became successful I thought I had everything. She paused. But I forgot the person who helped me get there. For once that she wasn't defending herself. She wasn't explaining. She was admitting. And that mattered. But it didn't erase everything. The next day a major announcement shocked the business world that Jason's investment records were released. Not by me. By his own mistakes. Several questionable decisions were exposed. The man who once stood beside Victoria as a future executive suddenly became the biggest risk in her company. His reputation collapsed overnight. People who once praised him disappeared. Friends stopped answering. Partners cut contact. Jason finally experienced what he had caused, being abandoned when you were no longer useful. That night, Victoria sent me a message that I finally understand. I looked at the words. Then another message came. You were never my shadow. I didn't reply. A third message arrived. I was standing in your light and thought you were standing in mine. I stared at the screen. For the first time, Victoria finally saw the truth. But understanding the truth was easy. Accepting the consequences was harder. The next morning, Victoria arrived at my company. This time she didn't come as a CEO. She didn't come asking for help. She simply stood outside my office. Waiting. My assistant informed me. Mr. Carter, Victoria Carter is here. I looked at the clock, then said, let her in, because there was one final conversation we needed to have. Not about business, not about Jason, about us. Victoria entered my office slowly. For the first time since I met her, she looked uncertain. Not the confident CEO who walked into meetings expecting everyone to follow her decisions. Not the woman who could silence an entire room with one sentence. Just Victoria. My wife. Or at least the woman who used to be. She stood in front of my desk for several seconds. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, Ethan. I looked up. Yes? Her fingers tightened slightly. I don't know where to start. I closed the document in front of me. Then start with the truth. She looked at me. The truth? Yes. I leaned back. Not the version that sounds good. Not the version that protects your company. Not the version that makes you feel better. I paused. The truth. Victoria lowered her head. For a long time, she said nothing. Then quietly, I hurt you. That was the first honest sentence she had said in months. I hurt you. She repeated. I thought, because you loved me, that you would always stay. I remained silent. She continued. I thought because you never complained, everything was fine. She smiled sadly. But I was wrong. Yes. My answer was simple. She looked at me. You don't even want to make me feel better. No, I shook my head. Because making you feel better was what I always did. That sentence made her eyes turn red, because she knew, for 5 years, whenever she was stressed, I comforted her. Whenever she doubted herself, I encouraged her. Whenever she failed, I reminded her who she was. But when I was hurt, she never did the same. Victoria sat down. Do you remember our first year? I nodded. Yes. You told me something. What? She looked at me. You said success was meaningless if you had nobody to share it with. I smiled slightly. I remember that I didn't understand then. She looked down. I thought success was everything. She paused. I thought once I became powerful, nothing could hurt me. And now, she looked at me. Now I know I was wrong. I didn't answer immediately. Because a part of me wanted to believe her. Not because I was weak. Because I loved the woman she used to be. The woman who stayed up all night working on ideas with me. The woman who celebrated small victories. The woman who once said, Ethan, if I ever become successful, I hope I never become someone who forgets you. She became exactly what she feared. Victoria took a deep breath. I want to fix everything. I looked at her. Everything? Yes. Can you? She froze. Because she knew the answer. Some things could be repaired. Some things could only be accepted. You don't believe me that I shook my head that it's not about belief. Then what? Trust that I looked at her. You broke something that took years to build. Her eyes filled with regret that I know that no I corrected her. You know now. She became quiet. Again, because every time I said that she realized something. She didn't understand my pain when it happened. She only understood after she lost control. A week later, Victoria made a decision that shocked everyone. She publicly announced changes in her company. The first thing she did was remove Jason from every leadership position. The second thing was admitting the Orion project failure came from internal mistakes. The third thing, she mentioned me. Not as her husband. Not as someone who supported her, as the person who helped build the foundation. The media immediately exploded. Victoria Carter credits mysterious chairman Ethan Carter for company's early success. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Would we reunite? Would I return? Would Carter Holdings acquire her company? But I had no interest in taking over her life that I had already spent years giving. Now I wanted to live for myself. Jason disappeared from the public eye. The same man who once dreamed of becoming Victoria's partner now struggled to find any company willing to work with him. One afternoon that he contacted me again. This time, but his voice was completely different. I understand now. I didn't respond, he continued. I thought you were lucky that I looked out the window. That I wasn't lucky. That no, he sighed. You built everything. Yes, and I tried to take your place. Yes, silence. Finally, he said. I'm sorry that I believed he meant it. But some apologies arrived after the damage was done. That I hope you find a better path. That I ended the call. Not because I hated him. Because his story was no longer my concern. Several months passed. That MY company continued growing. The Orion project became one of the most successful technology partnerships in the industry. People who once ignored me now wanted meetings. Investors wanted cooperation. Media wanted interviews. But I refused most of them. I had spent too much time proving myself to people who never saw me. That I didn't need to prove anything anymore. One evening I received an invitation. A charity event. Victoria was hosting it. I almost declined. But something made me go. When I arrived, she was already there. She saw me. For a moment, everything stopped. Not because we were still the same. Because we weren't. She walked toward me. Thank you for coming. I nodded. You're welcome. She smiled slightly. You're different. I looked at her. How? You seem peaceful. I thought about it. Maybe I was. Because for the first time in years I wasn't carrying someone else's dream. After the event, Victoria asked, Can I ask you something? Yes. If we met again today, she hesitated. Would you still choose me? I looked at her. That was the question she had been afraid to ask. I answered honestly. I don't. No. Her expression changed. I continued. Because the woman I chose 5 years ago was different. She lowered her eyes. But she looked at me. What? I smiled slightly. The woman standing in front of me now is finally someone who understands what she lost. Victoria didn't cry. She didn't beg. She simply nodded. Because she finally understood something. Love was not about keeping someone because they would never leave. Love was about valuing someone before they decided they had enough. Later that night she sent me one final message. I know I can't erase what happened, but I want you to know something. I was never proud because I built an empire. I was proud because the person I loved helped me build it. I read the message, then put my phone away because forgiveness and returning were two different things. Victoria had finally learned my value. But whether she could have me back, that was a decision only I could make. 6 months after the Orion project collapsed, the business world completely changed. People who once talked about Victoria Carter as an unstoppable billionaire started talking about something else. The man behind her success. Me. But I didn't care about the attention. For years I avoided the spotlight because I knew what mattered. Results. Not applause. Not headlines. Not people suddenly respecting me because they discovered my name. That was exactly what Victoria had misunderstood. She thought value came from recognition. I learned long ago that real value existed even when nobody saw it. Victoria's company survived. Barely. She rebuilt her leadership team, removed the people who only followed her because of money, changed the way she managed the company. For the first time in years, she started listening. Not pretending. Actually listening. Employees noticed. Partners noticed. Even competitors noticed. But there was one person who noticed more than anyone. Me. Because I knew Victoria better than anyone. I knew the difference between a temporary apology and real change. And this time she was changing. One afternoon, Victoria requested a meeting. Not at her office. Not at mine. At a small coffee shop where we used to go before her company became successful. When I arrived, she was already there. No assistants, no business documents, no phone calls. Just her. You came. I sat down. Yes. She smiled slightly. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. She nodded. I understand. That was something new. The old Victoria would have asked. Why? The new Victoria accepted the answer. For several minutes that we talked about ordinary things, not business, not money, not Jason, just life. Then Victoria suddenly asked, do you remember when we first started? Yes. You used to tell me that the hardest part of success wasn't reaching the top. I nodded. It was staying there. She smiled sadly. I thought you meant competitors. What did you think now? She looked at me. You meant myself. I didn't answer, because she was right. The biggest enemy of many successful people wasn't the world. It was the person they became after success arrived. Victoria looked down. I lost myself. I stayed quiet. She continued. I spent years trying to prove I was strong. She paused. But I became someone who hurt the only person who never doubted me. That was the first time she admitted it without excuses. Blaming pressured, blaming business, blaming Jason. Just herself. Meanwhile, Jason's life continued falling apart. After leaving Victoria's company, he tried to start over. He contacted investors. Nobody answered. He applied for executive positions. Companies rejected him, not because he lacked talent, because reputation mattered. The industry remembered what happened. A person who abandoned responsibility when things went wrong was someone nobody wanted leading a team. Eventually, Jason came to understand something. The position he wanted was never created by his ability. It was created by Victoria's trust. And Victoria's trust existed because she believed in me. One evening, I received an unexpected call from a former executive at Victoria's company. Mr. Carter. Yes, I wanted to thank you. For what? For giving the company another chance. I smiled. I didn't save the company. The executive was silent. Victoria did. That answer surprised him. I continued. She finally started leading instead of proving. The next month, Victoria invited me to the company anniversary event, the same event that had once celebrated the beginning of the Orion project. The same type of event where she had stood beside Jason, where she had praised him, where she had forgotten me. This time everything was different. When I entered, everyone recognized me. Employees stood. Executives greeted me. Investors approached, but Victoria didn't rush toward me. She waited. That small action told me something. She finally understood. Respect was not demanding someone's attention. It was allowing them a choice. During the speech, Victoria walked onto the stage. Everyone expected her to talk about the company. Instead, she said, before I talk about the future, I need to acknowledge something from the past. The room became quiet. She looked toward me. For a long time, I believed I built everything alone. Nobody moved. I believed success was proof that I didn't need anyone. She paused. But I was wrong. Her voice became softer. The person who believed in me before anyone else was the person I failed to appreciate the most. Everyone knew who she meant to me. Victoria continued. I lost sight of what mattered because I became obsessed with proving myself. She looked at the audience, and the hardest lesson I learned was this. She paused. Someone who stands quietly beside you is not someone without value. Silence. Sometimes they're the reason you are standing at all. After the speech, Victoria found me. I meant every word. I know. She looked surprised. You believe me? Yes. Then why do you still keep your distance? I looked at her. Because forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Her eyes lowered. I know. And rebuilding trust takes time. She nodded. I know. I smiled slightly. That was the biggest difference. The old Victoria wanted quick solutions. The new Victoria understood some things required patience. That night before leaving, Victoria stopped me. Ethan. I turned. She hesitated. I'm proud of you. Those words were simple, but they meant something. Because for years I had been proud of her. Now she finally saw me. Not my money. Not my company. As I walked away, I realized something. The person who once locked me outside my own home was no longer the same person, but neither was I. I was no longer the man waiting for someone else to recognize his value. I already knew it, and that changed everything. Because the greatest victory was not watching someone regret losing you. The greatest victory was becoming someone who no longer needed their regret. 1 year later, the business world had almost forgotten the scandal that once shook Victoria Carter's company. Almost. But Victoria never forgot. Because every day she remembered the same night, the night she locked me outside, the night she chose Jason, the night she believed she was protecting her empire, when the truth was she was pushing away the person who built the foundation beneath it. My company had grown beyond anything I originally planned. Carter Holdings became one of the most respected investment groups in the industry. The Orion project became a global success. The same $800 million deal that once represented Jason's dream became the project that revealed the truth. People often asked me, "Did you plan everything?" The answer was always the same. No, I never planned to expose Victoria. I never planned to destroy Jason. I never planned to reveal myself. I simply stopped protecting people who didn't value me. Sometimes the biggest changes in life happen when you stop forcing things to stay the same. Victoria changed too. She rebuilt her company differently. She no longer surrounded herself with people who only agreed with her. She listened. She learned. She admitted mistakes. For someone like Victoria, that was harder than winning $1 billion deal. Because money was easy for her, humility was not point one afternoon. Victoria requested one final meeting. Not as a CEO, not as a business partner, as someone who needed closure. We met in the same place where we had once talked about our future. A small restaurant near our first apartment. Before the billions, before the headlines, before everything became complicated, she looked at me and smiled. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "When I first met you, I thought you were the person who needed me." I said. "Nothing," she continued. "I thought I was the one giving you a better life." A bitter smile appeared on her face. But the truth was the opposite. She looked at me. "You were the person giving me everything." I looked out the window. "Victoria." "Yes? There's something you need to understand." She waited. "You weren't wrong because you became successful." She looked at me. "You were wrong because you forgot who you were before success." Her eyes became emotional. Because that was the truth. The woman I fell in love with wasn't the billionaire CEO. It was the woman who had nothing but still believed she could change the world. I wish I had known earlier. I looked at her. "Known what?" "Who you really were." I shook my head. And no, she was surprised. "No. I wish you had known who I really was without knowing my name." That sentence stayed between us. Because that was the entire point. A person's value should not appear only after their achievements become visible. That a person's value exists before the world recognizes it. Victoria lowered her head. "I lost you because I looked for someone better." I didn't answer. She continued. "But I never realized I was already standing beside the best person I would ever meet." I looked at her. "Victoria." She smiled sadly. "I know." She took a breath. "I know saying sorry doesn't fix everything." "No, I know I can't erase what happened. No, but I still want to say it." She looked directly at me. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Not Chairman Carter. Not the billionaire. Ethan." For the first time she apologized to the person she married. I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, "I forgive you." Her eyes moved. But she understood. Forgiveness was not a promise. It was not a return. It was simply letting go of the pain. I understand. And surprisingly, she did. Months later, Victoria and I met again. Not because of business. Not because of guilt. Not because she needed something. Just because life brought us together. She had become different. Less focused on proving herself. More focused on living. And I had become different too. I no longer needed to. I no longer needed to prove my value. One evening, she asked me, "Do you think we could have been happy if things happened differently?" I smiled. Maybe. Yes. Why not? Definitely. I looked at her. Because the people we were back then didn't know what we know now. She nodded. That was the answer. Sometimes two people don't lose each other because they don't love each other. Sometimes they lose each other because they stop seeing each other. Years ago, Victoria thought I was standing behind her. Supporter. A helper. A shadow. She was wrong. I was never behind her. I was beside her. And when she pushed me away, she finally saw the truth. I wasn't following her path. I was building my own. The world once knew Victoria Carter as the billionaire CEO who had everything. Then they knew her as the woman who almost lost everything. But I knew the truth. She was simply someone who learned a painful lesson. Power can create admiration. Money can create influence. Success can create attention. But none of those things can replace the person who loved you before you had anything. As for me, I never needed Victoria to tell the world who I was. I already knew. I was Ethan Carter. The man who built his own empire. The man who walked away when he was no longer respected. The man who learned the most important lesson of all. Never beg someone to see your value. Build a life so powerful that one day, even the person who lost you finally understands what they had. The end.